Okay, hi everyone. David Chian here for those of you who are seeing me for the first time. We are going to start our session soon. Just a few housekeeping notes, right, for those who just joined us. This is a Zoom webinar format session. That means that in order to ask a question during the talk or during the Q&A session, I will need you to click on your raise your hand button so that my staff who are here in the room with me, helping me, can unmute you for you to be able to speak. Once you're unmuted, I believe you are able to speak for the rest of the session, but do keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. Since there are many of us on the webinar together, we want to minimize interferences. Okay, let's start the session proper. I want to be quite informal about this, as most of you know. My name is David Chian, and I guess that when everybody is here today, you are here to listen to or discuss about meaning in life matters. The title of my Lee Gong Chen Professor public lecture talk is a scientist-practitioner approach, right, to understand and enhance meaning in life. I guess this topic is something that all of us are interested in. That's why you have signed up. But maybe let me say a few words first before we begin the session. The Lee Gong Chen professorship lecture is a public lecture, but of course, as you know, we can't possibly send to the whole world. So we send to targeted audience, and most people who signed up today, live in the session right now listening to me, most of you are from universities or from research institutes, which means you are academics or you are researchers, right? Quite a number of you are faculty, of course, from SMU and PhD students, but I see faculty from all schools represented. Which makes it a bit tough for me, meaning that I'm speaking not only to social and behavioral scientists, but I'm also speaking to lawyers, people from information system, integrative studies, quite many from business school and so on. I also noticed from the sign-up sheet that there are some CEOs with us. There are also social workers, counselors, and of course many students, undergraduates and PhD from SMU and elsewhere. The reason I give you an idea of the profile of the audience listening in is because that although this session is recorded, I want to do justice to the live audience listening to me. I will try to frame my talk, my lecture, and even my answers to your questions in a way that can appeal to the normal population, right? The normal population of the normal distribution. In other words, I may appear too easy for some of you, and I may appear too difficult for others. So do bear with me. During Q&A, of course, you have a chance to ask me questions of any kind, of any level of specificity, be it abstract or concrete, be it general or specific questions, technical or non-technical. Okay, so hopefully that will be a consolation for us as you go through this, as we go through this session together. All right, meaning in life and modeling meaning in life, right? Let me try to see if I can adjust the slides. Okay. Now I'll keep the session quite brief, actually. It's quite a complex topic, and I, of course, want to share with you at least the second half of the talk, some of my ongoing research for a particular reason, right? And that is that I believe it can benefit many of us coming from different perspectives today. This is just an outline of what I'm going to spend the rest of the 40 minutes or so with you. I'm going to talk about meaning in life, of course, the concept, that's why we're here for. Say a little bit about the interest and the importance of it, but then quickly to go into the current characteristics and limitations, right, in the academic or scholarly research on the topic of meaning in life. And as a way of responding to that, I want to share with you my personal approach as a scientist and practitioner. A scientist and practitioner meaning a scientist by occupation, but I think also a practitioner in terms of my passion and goals in trying to provide evidence-based recommendations or translations to address real-world issues. And I will share with you, I believe, even for those of us who attend our BSI seminars regularly each term, I believe it's something that is quite new to you, right? Because this scientist practitioner approach that I adopt and I'm advocating, at least on this topic, will appear quite different from the usual academic or scientific approach that we listen to faculty seminars and so on. It doesn't mean it won't appear in publications. In fact, that's the goal. It will appear in publications, but it is approach that is quite different, right? I think from our standard approach. And I hope that by doing this, some of you who will remain as academics, some of you will go into industry or go into policy making, will find this approach not only novel, but actually useful that you can apply. And then I'll go to the meat of what I really want to share with you, right? And that is why we need to focus on lived experiences. and I'll share with you the 5 C's of meaning in life in my model, and of course, providing you some preliminary empirical findings or results of a larger ongoing program of research that I have on meaning in life. Right? I will, as I said, try to keep it brief, but at the same time, I need to make sure that we all have a common understanding. So I may pause here and there to make sure the points get across. We'll have a Q&A session, so no problems, right? If you have long questions, especially, try to note them down so that you can ask them during the Q&A. But if you have some dying questions that you really need to clarify as I speak, right, just raise your hand, and my colleague will unmute you, and you'll be able to ask those clarifying questions as well. Okay, so let's start with meaning in life, right? Obviously, we are talking about a research focus here. I'm not doing a motivational talk. My goal here is not to try to address any problems that you might have in your personal lives. I have enough problems of my own. What we really want to do here is to share with you the research or the scholarly work or the science of meaning in life. But in doing so, I believe all of us will learn from it. I remember that I taught a class, both undergraduate and subsequently a PhD class on well-being, and we spent a whole session talking about meaning in life, right? And even in those academic class sessions, myself and students, right, I think we learn from it, and we try to apply some of these things into our personal lives and share our personal experiences. So just to be clear, a scientific approach to meaning in life is not a dispassionate one. It actually can affect our own personal sense of meaning in life, and our experiences will bring to bear on our research, and our research might actually give us new perspective as individuals to look at our own lives or lives of our loved ones and of our friends. As usual, when we begin talking about meaning in life, right, you will see that psychologists will start with this distinction. Meaning in life is not the same as meaning of life. Okay, as you would have read from the abstract of my talk, meaning of life is really a more philosophical, religious, or spiritual issue, right? Where religion or even philosophy try to grapple with and sometimes prescribe answer to what is the purpose human live on life, why, where are they going, why are they here, where do they come from? Those are meaning of life issues that empirical psychologists are not equipped to answer. They are not trained to answer, and that's not the purpose of this talk. In contrast, we speak about meaning in life. Meaning in life is really about our personal sense of, hey, is my life worth living? Am I living a fulfilling life? I begin to perceive my current life, my future, months and years ahead, and say, is there hope for me? Is there a purpose? Does this motivate me, and so on? So those meaning in life questions are questions that actually every one of us asks. I would argue that from young adults, even before undergraduates, you find that most of us are asking ourselves meaning in life questions or sharing with our friends meaning in life questions, but we may not use that term, right? So each time when we say, I find my life is hopeless, there's no purpose, or what's my sense? I really enjoy my life, it's fulfilling, I'm going to do this again. Right? We are actually dealing with meaning in life questions. Right? So just to set the stage, meaning in life today, we are talking about our own ordinary day-to-day, once in a while, a sense of our life, is it worth living? What is the purpose, and so on. And not philosophical, spiritual, or religious questions, right, about meaning of life. Now, if you look at the research, right, for those of you, my colleagues and my students, many of you are familiar with meaning in life research, or MIL for short. I think you will notice that in the different definitions or conceptualizations of meaning in life, there is a common theme, right? And that is that it tends to talk about, do we, or do I as an individual have a personal sense of purpose in my life? Now, but if you dig further into the meaning of life concept, especially looking at the way it is measured, it actually probably consists of, there's quite a lot of common agreement now, right? That it consists of three main aspects when we talk about the concept of meaning in life, right? And that is, it contains within it sense of purpose. In other words, hey, what's the purpose of living? What's the purpose of my life? I have a clear purpose in my life. So there's a purpose. It's one of the three main dimensions or core aspects of the notion of meaning in life. The second notion, or rather the second aspect of the notion of meaning in life, is one of coherence. It's a little bit difficult, right? Coherence is sometimes referred to as comprehension. Now, to make things simple, it really means, does life make sense to me? right? If I say, oh, my life makes sense, I know why I'm here, I know what I'm doing, I have a good friends, I have good family, I have good work, I know I want to help people, everything cohere together the way I live my life. And when things cohere together, I understand, I make sense of things that happen to me or things around me, then that forms the second aspect, a core aspect of the notion of meaning in life. Right now, the third aspect, scientists like to give it difficult words. They use the word existential mattering. Does my existence matter? In other words, to put it quite simply, it's about significance, right? What is the significance of my life? The fact that I, David Chian, exist, does it make any difference to the world? Does it make a different impact to anybody around me, right? So does my existence even matter? If I were to die today, does anybody care? Is that going to make any difference in the world, right? So existential mattering revolves around the question of the significance of my life, my own understanding of it. Now, very important is subjective, right? So David Chian, as an individual, will have some degree of purpose, coherence, or mattering or significance of my life. It doesn't quite matter what you think about my life, right? My meaning in life is what I think about my meaning in life. Now, my meaning in life might be very different from your meaning in life. And more importantly, my meaning of life might be very different from the way you see me as an individual. But this does not matter, right? What we are focusing on here is me as an individual, my subjective sense and experience of my meaning in life. Now, why is that focus so important, especially as scientists? Why should I focus on something that is so subjective? And especially what if it doesn't gel with reality, right? The subjective focus is really critical and important in the same way that subjective well-being, those of you who are familiar with this term, is important because it is the subjective experience or sense of my meaning in life that's going to predict what happened to me, my attitudes, the way I think, the way I feel, the way I behave, which of course in turn will affect the way that I subsequently live my life, the people around me, and so on. How I think, how I feel, I'm going to be happy, what happened to my health, and so on. Now, a little bit of history first, right? When meaning in life got popularized, right, actually among psychologists, actually it started with a psychiatrist, right? A psychiatrist that some of you would have heard of, a person who actually wrote a book called The Search for Meaning, right? And without going into the details of the historical context, right? Basically, it talks about that, meaning in life can come about only, and in fact, it comes about when we go through the worst circumstances in our life, right? Maybe you get caught in a concentration camp, you lost a loved one, you lost a limb or something like that. And this author then begin to say that it is under those adverse situations that your meaning in life evolves, and only then, right, you begin to appreciate and try to make sense of your life. And he also argues that all of us actually have this innate sense of motivation to try to get a grasp of our life and come to some judgment about our meaning in life, right? If we could be evaluating now or re-evaluating it subsequently later. Now, this author, of course, gets cited by everybody, subsequently by psychologists. But it is interesting to note, especially for my colleagues and students who are doing in meaning in life literature, you will notice that positive psychology has kind of taken over. And people who are doing meaning in life research now actually do not start from the premise that things must be terrible, suffering, before we can talk about meaning in life, right? Which I support, right? In other words, we should be and we can be talking about meaning in life, even though we have not gone through a major crisis or a negative life event. And it must be so. If not, can you imagine a young adult, maybe in his or her 20s and 30s, have not been through hardships or anything major or big crisis? Are we then going to say this person has no sense of meaning in life? It cannot be. Or let's take me, for example. Hypothetically, let's say I live a life where it's quite ordinary and I have not gone through any major life crisis. It can't be that for all my years of living, which is 59 years by now, I don't have a sense of meaning in life, either a good or a bad one, right? So meaning in life, what psychologists and empirical scientists or behavioral scientists have interestingly, I think, made a big contribution, and that is to move us from the idea that meaning in life must start from very negative life events to something that is very ordinary, something that all of us actually should have some degree of, and we are actually trying to make sense of, and it helps us in various ways without us sometimes knowing about it and so on. Now, if you listen to our new Prime Minister, Mr. Lawrence Wong, or others, right, it's not hard to find out that actually our policy makers or practitioners or CEOs in organizations who care about employee health are all actually interested in how people live their lives. Do they find that they are living a meaningful life, doing meaningful work, and so on, how they perceive their lives to be, right? And that kind of interest in the day-to-day or everyday living is very important. And if you look at Singapore's context, the Forward Singapore, which is the big exercise led by current Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, when he was Deputy Prime Minister, he started the exercise. And one of the findings reportedly, right, in the report is that many people, especially young people, not just young, but especially young people, actually would like to live a life that is fulfilling and meaningful. And one of their main goals that they purportedly said, right, is that I really want to live a meaningful life. Now, remember, there is no stakes in many of these big exercises. So the social desirable responding is not very high. Some of them can even be anonymous as they respond to these interviews and so on. So I just want to start off the session by reminding us that meaning in life is something that you and I all care about and deal with, even though we might not use that term in our everyday living. It is motivational. If it is a high or good sense of meaning in life, we are tend to be directed to goals that will motivate us to do well. If we have a low meaning in life or a poor meaning in life, it is quite possible that we might not be that active. We might also have many negative consequences and so on. So what does science or the research tell us about these associations, right, with meaning in life? I won't show you numbers, right, because of the nature of the audience, as I mentioned. I will summarize it linguistically rather than show you lots of statistics and numbers. The research is quite clear. I think we can safely say that we know now with many different kinds of research, many correlational, but there are some experimental designs, some longitudinal, some prospective designs, meaning that they collect some predictor scores or variables at one point, and then in the subsequent data point, they try to look at the criterion, right? And then try to correlate or associate them. So there's a prospective design. Now, what we have found out, or we meaning the researchers as a whole, right, over the years, I would say 20 to 30 years, have found quite consistent evidence, right, that our meaning in life is actually associated with the following variables. Subjective well-being, that refers to our sense of life satisfaction, also our emotional well-being in terms of the positive emotions or effect that we might have or the negative effect that we might have. So you, of course, want low negative effect and high positive effect, right? Then in a net way, you have a good emotional experience. And coupled together with life satisfaction, which is the idea that do I get my needs and wants and expectations and preferences satisfied, met, then I'm satisfied with my life, right? Depending on what you want in your life. And we find that people who are high on their subjective well-being, indicated by these components, whether you look at overall or the individual components, they are actually associated quite well with meaning in life. Now, later I will talk about what that means, but it is quite clear that most people, I think, can confidently say that meaning in life somehow are able to influence, or you might even use the word cause, right? Subjective well-being. And conversely, your subjective well-being can influence or cause your levels of meaning in life and so on. Now, of course, meaning in life is not difficult to understand. It is also associated with the level of hope that we have, our individual self-esteem, in terms of self-efficacy, beliefs, sense of competence, and so on. I think there's a question, a hand raised. I'll come to you very soon. Let me finish this slide so it's easier for the rest who are listening in. So it's positively associated with self-esteem, our sense of competence, our sense of autonomy. Do we think we have the freedom to do what we want to do? Whether we have positive social relationships and so on. People who are high on meaning in life also tend to have good physical health or mental health. Conversely, if you have low meaning in life, you also tend to have a poor physical or mental health, even cardiovascular diseases and so on. Some of these designs, by the way, are quite well done. They are quite prospective, right? So you can be quite sure of some of the substantive or even causal link between them. Personality traits, some of the traits, and I'll come to that in my research later, have been shown to have some moderate or weak relationship, right, with meaning in life. People who are more extroverted, more conscientious, and lower in neuroticism, right? That means people who don't keep worrying about things around them, they tend to have a higher sense of meaning in life and so on. Then, of course, low meaning in life associated with high substance abuse use. This refers to alcohol or drugs. And also suicides, right? You know, the idea of thinking about suicides or even attempting suicides or actually committing it, right? The people with low meaning in life tend to also have that association. So I have a question, I think. Can you just unmute yourself and ask a question? Because I couldn't see see you. So if you have written a question in the Q&A, I actually couldn't quite see you. You can just unmute yourself and speak also. All right, my staff is very helpful. She's showing me. I have a question here, if I could read for everybody, in case you can't see. It says that this anonymous person say that meaning in life seems very similar to what Big Questions has covered. I suppose it's the undergraduate. Big Questions is a course in SMU. Right? Big Questions has covered about happiness and suffering. But do you think that the purpose of life is more of a psychological phenomenon, or is it more socially constructed? Okay, that's a good question. Actually, a pretty difficult question, right? So the question by the person, really the student of faculty, basically say is meaning in life, at least from my perspective of the research I'm sharing with you, is it psychological or social? Well, if we use the word, normally it is used, it is both social and psychological. It is social insofar as it involves interpersonal relationships, and it is social insofar it involves the relationship between me and a particular group, me and in-group or me and out-group and so on. So it is social in that social psychological sense, right? Where there are people involved other than yourself, and that somehow factor in or affect into your own personal sense of your meaning in life. But it is primarily psychological. If you use the word psychological to refer to my subjective experience, my subjective perception, the way I evaluate my life, the way I pause and reevaluate my life. So psychological can include social, right? Social need not have to be psychological, right? So most of us will just use the word social psychological or psychological in a very general sense to refer to our assessment, our sense, our experience of our own meaning in life. Is it socially constructed? Now, if you take a sociological perspective, I'm not a sociologist, but I studied sociology as an undergraduate. I'm always interested and I'm familiar with at least the classics, right? Of course, you can talk about from a philosophical sociology of knowledge issue about how, as a group, human beings of different cultures begin to try to make sense of the things around them. And due to certain power relations, the idea of meaning in life is constructed. I'm okay with that if you also use that approach to every other construct that exists, because all constructs that psychologists, sociologists are interested in that general sense, right, can be referred to as socially constructed. But I just want to share that the research itself on meaning in life tend to look at it as a subjective experience, subjective but very important because it affects the way we think, we feel, and we behave, right? The person, whoever who asked the question, we can come back and talk about this again, right? Now, because of time, I'm going to, of course, be faster on some slides and slower on others. I just want to go straight into what I think are the unresolved issues and limitations that we have. If I show you this slide again, right, it seems pretty good, isn't it? Meaning in life, can correlate with all the positive things, and of course, negatively with the negative things. So every one of us should try to have high or a good or a positive sense of ourselves, of our meaning in life, which means we should look for meaning or we do things that will actually enhance our meaning in life. Yes, granted, we are not sure of the causal relationship, but the association seems to be quite consistent across different study designs and population segments. Then it at least appears that meaning in life is not something epiphenomenal. In other words, it's not a byproduct that's useless, right? It seems to have some use of its own. Now, this research, therefore, has actually garnered a lot of interest among policymakers, practitioners, and social behavioral scientists looking at it. But I want to share with you that while it is important, actually things are not as clear as this slide might seem to suggest. And that's why I have a program of research and something that I've been working on since around the mid 20, from 2010 to 2015, I started looking at meaning in life from an academic research perspective, right? And subsequently, I also taught courses on that. and published some work in that. I want to share that with you. Now, if you, this gets a little bit technical, apologize to those who are not so familiar with the well-being research. Now, if you look at the research on well-being, right, there is always this chapter or this article that you will read that says that, oh, life satisfaction and PA or NA, positive negative effect, together they form what you call hedonic well-being. Things that you need, you want, you get it, and they are very concrete stuff, like the way I feel, the emotions, or if I want a car, I want a house, I want to get married, I want to have kids, do I actually get those expectations fulfilled? So they call that hedonic well-being. And then they say that, no, meaning in life is pretty important. It's also an aspect of well-being, and we should call it another type of well-being, right? And refers to as eudaimonic well-being. It's not a new term. It came all the way from Aristotle time, Greek time, right, where they talk about well-being, having a sense, a cognitive wisdom sense of able to understand and make sense of life and so on. I just want to, at least for the more technical people, I want to share with you that by the end of this talk, I hope that you will get a sense that this division of eudaimonic well-being, hedonic well-being is not maybe very useful, right? It would be better to think about well-being as just your traditional life satisfaction, PANA. So well-being is hedonic well-being. And think about meaning in life as one of the very important things that can predict SWB and also be predicted as a consequence of your SWB, right? And so how they relate becomes very important. And I will suggest to you from my research, you might take a specifically quite different approach to looking at the relationship between meaning in life and SWB. Okay. Another limitation that or unresolved issue that I want to share with us before we go into my approach to meaning in life is that the source of personal meaning actually can differ across individuals, right? That's very clear. Including articles that I've written, all of us kept saying this. Your meaning of in life and my meaning in life can come from different sources. From you, maybe it's from religion. From me, maybe it's actually from traveling and appreciating nature. Yet for another person, it could be having a good family. Another person could be doing something that could really make a difference to the community or at the workplace. So everybody recognizes that the meaning in life, our sources doesn't matter. So long as you have high or low meaning, any sources are welcome, so to speak. But the fact that if sources doesn't matter, and I agree that sources sort of doesn't matter, you can derive your meaning in life from different sources. Not only that, you can also weight them differently. That actually raises a very important question, right, for scientists. That means, should we still be doing the research that we usually do? If you take a personality factor, draw a circle in a path model and start drawing an arrow, you are actually giving one particular circle, one particular arrow, and one parameter estimate to, let's say, well-being. So you can have also, let's say, personality affecting meaning in life. You draw an arrow, you have a parameter estimate there. And then you concluded that that is the parameter estimate, right? It means that for everybody in your sample and therefore your population, you have actually decided that that is the estimation of the strength of that predictor. Now, isn't that going against the idea that actually the source of personal meaning, in this case from this particular personality trait or this religious experience, could differ across individuals? Actually, I think it does, right? Conceptually, philosophically, epistemologically, right? In terms of the way we analyze our data, we make inferences, and yet we want to hold on to this very important axiom, right? That the sources of meaning in life can differ across individuals. I think there is actually at least a philosophical, if not an actual empirical contradiction, right? In the way that we hold on to this assumption and the way we do our research. And so how I approach it is to try to say that, well, we can still approach your research differently without violating this, I think, very important assumption, which I happen to believe strongly too, that the sources of our personal meaning in life really may differ across individuals. Okay, very quickly, because I'll come back to this, the way that our research on meaning in life, I'm simplifying here a little bit, right? If you look at the meaning in life literature, which some of us have done the literature review, I would dare say that about 80% of all, they are focusing on really two variables most of the time. It's a very bivariate approach, right? To take a particular variable, like say personality traits, right? Maybe different traits, but still is personality. Then they try to correlate with meaning in life measured. So you have two variables. It's a bivariate approach. Then you find an empirical association, or you take a variable like gratitude, and then you correlate it with meaning in life. And then you make conclusions like people who are more grateful tend to find higher meaning in life, or people who find their lives meaningful tend to be more grateful, right? So you make a causal leap, to make a causal inference between the two, simply based on two variables, and empirical association linking them, right? So there's a bivariate approach. And then the very difficult one is that when people look at presence of meaning and the search for meaning, the literature right now is a whole lot of confusion, I would argue, right? That we are really not clear, or people themselves are not clear, the researchers, on what is the relationship between having meaning and searching for meaning. Does it mean that if I'm searching for meaning, I don't have a meaningful life? Or could it be that I'm already very meaningful in my life, but I just want to be more meaningful and therefore I'm searching? Or could it be that if I'm not searching, that means I don't care about meaning, I think I gave up? Or I'm not searching because I'm really very meaningful and very happy and very fulfilling, there is really no need for me to search. In other words, conceptually, empirically, there is really no idea of when you are searching and when you're not searching, what is your level of meaning in life and so on. And that actually has caused quite a lot of confusion. I would argue unnecessary studies and paragraphs written, right, about the relationship between presence of meaning and the search for meaning in life. I know this is something that quite a lot of you are looking into, right? So students and faculty. So I just say a little bit more about presence versus the search for meaning. Why it is quite confusing. The effects are actually either zero effects or very mixed, and when they are mixed, they're usually small effects and not large effects, right? You can do the similar literature review. I'm sure you'll come to the same conclusion as what I've done, right? People find that the search for meaning, when you correlate it with the actual whether you have meaning or not, the relationship is either close to zero, not significant, or when it is significant, it tends to be small and sometimes negative. And so some, of course, researchers have taken a giant leap, right? They have gone on to say that actually compared to those who have a high personal sense of meaning in life, and if you are still actively searching for your meaning in life, you tend to be the more anxious guy, you are less happy, that's why you are searching. But maybe you're a little bit more open-minded because you're still trying new things, and so you're more interested in the world around them. Right? So this second bullet point is written there for you, and I think it's a bold inference and statement. Actually, it's not totally supported by data, right? It is just some researchers who went on to argue that maybe that's why there is a negative relationship between a sense of our meaning in life and our search for meaning in life. And the third point, the confusion, is that some of the findings actually suggest that the levels of our SWB, our well-being and meaning in life, tend to be lower when your meaning is derived from very self-centered and materialistic sources, right, rather than self-transcendent or altruistic sources. Complicated statement, a simple example for academics. Suppose your meaning in life is to get fame and get a number of top publications, or to do the best in class, and that gives you a sense of accomplishment and meaning, and that's fine, right? But according to this research, some of the findings shows that if that is your source of meaning in life, it tends to be less resilient. It tends to be also lower overall, right, in your experience of meaning, compared with somebody who actually has a meaning in life that's more altruistic, less about the self. For example, if for an academic again, if your meaning in life is derived from the fact that you think that your science, your work is producing important things that can make a difference to people around you, that can change policies without you necessarily be given the credit, for example, and if that drives you and that gives you meaning, the argument goes, you'll tend to have a higher sense of meaning because the sources of your meaning transcend yourself and tend to be altruistic. Just to caution us again, for those of us who are interested in search for meaning, these are not very robust findings. They are just suggestions from relatively weak relationships that people found, right? And I will come back to that at the end of the talk to say that from my approach, how I personally would then look at this confusing relationship between presence and search for meaning. Still on search, still on meaning. This is the most widely used by Stiglitz in 2006 that came out with a questionnaire, and he identified two factors of meaning in life, right? He said, and I think he's right, that we must be very clear what are we measuring, because before him, some of the measures and items confuses and put together items that were measuring your meaning in life as well as your search for meaning in life. Okay, so in the first factor, you have things like, my life has a clear sense of purpose. I have a good sense of what makes my life meaningful. I've discovered life's purpose, and those are clearly measuring whether meaning in life is present in me, and to what extent. These are typically on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. Then you have another factor that measures the search for meaning, that if you agree to those items, you are saying that you are currently actively trying to find meaning in your life, trying to do things that gives you meaning in your life, and so on. But if you look at the items for search for meaning, I think it is quite clear to you that they are quite neutral, right? By saying yes to these items, if you're always looking to find life's purpose, sounds a bit negative. But if you're searching for things that make your life feel significant, it doesn't actually tell me that you think your life is totally hopeless and insignificant now, or that it is already very significant, and you continually want to find things to make your life more significant. So we don't know, right? So the search for meaning, when you look at the items and the common measure, this is the most commonly used measure for search for meaning. It is quite clear. It leaves open the question, right? Why you are searching and your level of meaning when you are searching. And therefore, if my participants are really answering the items properly, it should not surprise you. There should be a zero correlation or very low correlation between presence of meaning and search for meaning, right? Because I could have meaning and still be searching for other things that are more meaningful, or I could be not searching or I could be searching because I have zero meaning and so. Okay, now that's quite a mouthful, quite a difficult time, I think, for those of us who are less technically inclined, and yet you're interested in the science of modeling meaning methods, right? Which is the title of my talk. And I really have, if you forget many things that I say, there's only about one or two things that I hope you can get away with that will affect your work, right? Either scientifically, meaning conceptually, or empirically, even methodologically, how you approach doing research within or outside the area of meaning in life, but also practically, right? Especially this video is being recorded. I think policymakers, civil servants will get to listen to this too. If you are interested in trying to have society or have a policy that ensures Singaporeans or people living in Singapore live a meaningful life, what are some of the things that you can do or you can't do, or some of the things that there's no point in doing, or some of the things that you should try to do. You will not be short of scientists or consultants trying to work with you. I'm speaking to policymakers now, but it will be good to be able to discern, right? What any consultants say to you, to ensure that you're getting your worth for the money or the time that you put in trying to figure out meaning in life and so on. I've just been told I have a question, so I'm going to read off. As I said, you can raise your hand and ask verbally instead, but I've been getting shy people who choose to ask the questions on screen. Okay, I have a question that says, is there empirical research on this? What proportion, and this meaning, what proportion of humans truly care about finding meaning in life? Does that vary across cultures? Does it change with age? Does it change with gender? And most humans, does it focus on life as a material variant thought of meaning in life? Okay, that's 6 questions in one. But very briefly, yes, right, the research that I've shared with you, of course, is not an academic talk per se, so I have not listed all the references for you. But if you do a lit search, you will find that there's quite a lot of work done on this. And when we measure meaning in life, and I have quite a lot of Singapore data, both on undergraduates and national population, there are people who will give you variation in their meaning in life. They understand what the items are saying, and there are people who are searching and people who are not searching and so on. Does it vary across culture? This has been a difficult question that many of us talk about in research and also in class, right? I think what constitutes meaning can vary across culture, but the concept or the general notion of meaning can be robust across culture. In other words, I can talk about my life is meaningful, regardless of which culture you are. I can still compare two cultures or two people from two different cultures on your levels of meaning in life. But what do you understand as to predict meaning in life? What constitutes your meaning in life might systematically vary across culture. So for a culture, for example, that are East Asians, they are very collectivist. Perhaps being part of a community, interrelatedness forms a very critical part of you that will give you a sense of purpose. of meaning in life. But if you're from an individualistic culture, then anything that is groupy or collectivistic might not be a very important part of your experience or conceptualization of meaning in life. So cultural differences, I would argue, could occur at the level of the predictors of meaning in life or the substantive components of the meaning in life. But the general notion of meaning in life as an evaluation of your levels on this construct can be, I think, robust across cultures, right? And that's true for life satisfaction as well, isn't it? Surely you can talk about life satisfaction and compare across countries, but you need not say that there are no differences, cultural differences in what matters more for one country than another, or one culture than another in terms of what is satisfaction. Really quickly, another question says, how come the parameter for measuring a person's meaning in life assumes that when a person is questioning the meaning of life, that suggests that the person is anxious? Is there another variable, bivariate model of testing happens in people? Okay, I think the question might be about the example I gave. Um, I think what I meant to say is that if you just have a conclusion that one particular predictor or trait can relate to one particular meaning in life, say at this very high level, and then another trait relate to it at a very low level, you are actually making a general statement of your entire sample and therefore your population to which you generalize your findings to, that trait A is more important than trait B. Right? You have given a weight that trait A is higher weight than trait B, obviously, due to the parameter estimate difference to the entire sample and therefore the population that you generalize to, which means that the entire population, you are saying, have the same weight, that trait A is more important than trait B. But what we just said was that meaning in life, the sources of meaning, including the weighting, can differ across individuals. And if that is the case, then there must be at least some way of modeling our research or studying that take into account these varied individual differences of weighting that can appear, that can occur across different individuals, right? It's a little bit technical and complex. Essentially, if you are claiming that there are systematic heterogeneity in the population, then can you really, simplify things by assuming any within population heterogeneity is error, right? That's the psychometric way of answering it. But for the person asking this question, I think you're welcome to talk to me offline, right? Because it get a little bit more technical already. Okay, now I have one more question and then I'll go back to carry on so as not to break the flow. I have a question from Ming Hong, my colleague. And Ming Hong asked me, if people do not have an expectation or a clear sense of meaning in life, can they still enjoy their life? Well, I hope so. And in fact, the research has shown that surely you can have high positive effect, be quite high, and your negative effect can be quite low, but your meaning of life need not necessarily be very high. They are related, but they are distinct concepts, right? So if you look at enjoy as simply the presence of positive emotions and the absence of negative emotions, then truly yes. Right? Of course, most of us will say if you're getting high on drugs, you don't want to classify that as positive emotion in the traditional sense of trying to enhance emotion. But you can be high on, you can be high, you can be positive, high on positive emotions in different ways, right? You simply enjoy to be with your friends, right? You simply enjoy having a car, having a nice house, and or you enjoy traveling, but you might not have a personal sense of evaluating about your purpose in life and so on. But you still enjoy life. You're traveling, you're enjoying, but you need not have a particular high level of what is your purpose in life and so on. So yes, the short answer is that you need not have a clear conceptualization of meaning in life or a high level in order for you to enjoy life. If by enjoy, you refer to high satisfaction, high positive effect, and low negative effect. Okay, let me try to speed up a little bit because of the time and so on, right? But those are good questions, and please keep them coming in, especially during the Q&A and so on. To cut the story short, right? I really think that this is a bold statement, right? I think that the rate that our meaning in life research are going on, being conducted, and I've said this in class, in PhD class especially, is quite limiting, right? If we continue to pursue meaning in life the way that it has been done so far, I think we are not going to produce very good scientific insights, and we are not going to help change the world, so to speak, by giving evidence-based recommendations to policymakers. or people who are change agents that can make a real difference to people's meaning in life. And I'll show you, I'll try to show you why I say something like that. Okay. Of course, to really understand meaning in life and to enhance it, you need to first conceptualize it adequately. And I think our conceptualization is still one thing at the moment. You need to measure it and assess it adequately. I think we do have a good measure of meaning in life, but we are not very good when we start doing psychometrics and statistical analysis and try to associate it with other variables. I think we are just doing a little bit of dust bowl empiricism most of the time. Right? And the main reason is because I think we have not been modeling meaning in life properly, where we should include many other constructs and variables that are associated with meaning in life when you try to understand or try to enhance meaning in life, such as going beyond just two variable approach to examine the various proximate causes or components of what do we mean by living meaningfully. Now, and that goes to the crux of my presentation, right? My work, in fact. Meaning in life is about, I want to live a meaningful life. Am I living meaningfully? So what is meaning in life about? It is less about personality. It is less about what you have, right? Meaning in life is clearly about the very experience of your living, your life. And I would argue, therefore, to understand and enhance and predict meaning in life, you must understand the most proximate cause or the most proximate component that constitute meaning in life. Because the clearer, the nearer you get into a criterion, the stronger will the causal or the predictive relationship will be. And all of us know that from a causal chain, right? Because the further you get, the effect is A times B times C. The nearer you get, that's the C, right? C will always be larger than A times B times C. So this really stems from my previous work, right? That I think it is very important to not to be fixated at unitary factors, but to try to understand the criterion better. And in this case, I think we need to understand the notion of living meaningfully, and therefore, what really matters is to quantify, conceptualize, and understand what do we mean by lived experiences, right? So the whole idea here is, of course, we are modeling meaning matters, right? Anything about meaning, we are trying to model. But how you model the meaning also matters. Because if we don't model meaning appropriately with the right variables, the right estimates, and looking at constructs, I think we'll get the picture wrong and so on, right? This sounds sexy, modeling meaning matters and modeling meaning matters. It takes some time to reflect on it, and I think you will realize there's a difference between these two. Okay, time is catching up on me. Let me quickly go to the give you some illustrative examples, right, on why I think it is so critical for us to not just look at personality, look at determination needs like autonomy and so on, but to look at the life experiences that we are going through. Because how we perceive our lives surely is tied immediately to what we are normally, often, or mostly experiencing in our lives, isn't it? I mean, if I am just being scolded by my boss all the time, if I go without food, and if these are things that are happening to me, I'm experiencing in my lives, surely these are the things that are going to be immediately affecting how I perceive my life. So I don't think I require a genius or rocket science to say that the most proximate causes of your meaning in life has to be your lived experiences, right? Because you are evaluating your life, and what you're experiencing in your life must be the most proximate causes of that evaluation. Now, if you look at what the research is doing, however, they are looking at distal traits that most of the time, and they're looking at very unidimensional constructs. They're looking at a trait like extroversion, conscientious, and then they ask, are extroverted people more likely to have a meaning in life and so on. So they are moving further away from the criterion of interest called meaning in life. Instead of looking at the lived experiences, you're going further and further away in the causal chain and look at things like your personality, because your personality presumably will interact with the situation to produce your experiences. So why shouldn't we not be looking at the experiences and instead to try to get further away from meaning in life and look at something distal like personality? Well, I think there's value in that, but I think it is not helping us to try to understand or predict meaning in life better or stronger. Okay, so let me show you very quickly, and then I will go through this a little bit, bullet speed a bit, for you to get a sense, and then I think we can have a discussion. I don't expect any one of us to end this session and going away with a very clear sense of the research, right? It's quite confusing. I will hope that we start to think about it differently, conceptually, methodologically, and practically, right? So what are lived experiences? Now, let me explain a little bit. I understand our lived experiences to be really multidimensional composite constructs, right? If you were to use psychometric terms. In other words, when I say my lived experiences of, am I fitting my job as a professor? Do I think I fit my job? Is the job a good fit for me, right? That is a component of my lived experience. And that itself is multidimensional. When I ask the question, when David asked himself, is being a professor something that fits me? Is this a good job fit for me? That question actually is not a singular question. It has embedded in it various dimensions and so on. And therefore, the experience that I answer myself and say, I think it's a good fit, or no, it's a moderate fit or a bad fit, actually can be derived from multiple variables. It also means that Will or Ming Hong and ask himself, or who are my colleagues, ask himself the same question. He or she might think about different things than me. So we can have different sources, different ways of coming to the conclusion, which may differ or be the same, but we are all evaluating our person job fit. And that lived experience, therefore, is multidimensional. It allows for us to have individual differences in our sources of meaning and the way we weight our meaning, right? So it does not require, if I think about my evaluation of my job fit as my lived experience, it does not require at all for me to come to a confirmed set of variables that everybody must share with the equal ways. Straight away, the focus on lived experience take care of the issue I mentioned about individual differences in sources of your meaning in life, and the fact that the weights might vary across individuals. This is really quite a tough point to understand, I know, right? But it's a very important scientific, and later you will see practical point that I hope, especially my faculty, colleagues, and students will take some time to think through what I say, and I will be very happy to discuss more about this after the session. Right? Now, the other thing about lived experiences that I think we should focus on is why we should focus on it is because they are really potentially applicable to the vast majority and most, if not all, segments of the population we are interested, right? So take Singapore, for example. If you talk about meaning in life and you just focus on things like, do I want to get married? Or you focus on things like a happy marriage life. But what about people who are single? Now, in Singapore's population, in very soon you have about 35 to 40% of the people who are single, and they will die single. You cannot have a science and you cannot have a practice on meaning in life based on only 50 to 60% of the population, right? Because for the people who are going to remain single by circumstances or choice, they will not have a satisfaction with spouse, as a variable to affect and to think about in their meaning in life. So I need to find lived experiences that will apply to both the single and the married, both male and female, and to different people. And I think that will then help us to advance the science and practice of meaning in science. In other words, look for things that matters that can measure for everyone, right? Regardless of things like your social economic status or marital status. And I would argue that lived experiences, right? How things like whether I fit my job, things like whether I can be who I am, things like whether I'm part of a larger community that I like to be with. These are issues and questions and experiences that all of us go through, regardless of which segment of the population you come from. Why that is important? Because if I am able to focus on lived experiences as a proximate predictor and have some findings on it, then I can inform my ministers and my policymakers of what to do. Because the prime minister is not going to change your personality in order to increase your meaning in life. He cannot also remove people he doesn't like with low personality so that they have a population of high meaning in life. But what the prime minister can do is to have policy and to encourage the society to have an environment where people go through certain lived experiences according to the science of what lived experiences can predict meaning in life and so on. So immediately you will see the practical difference, right, in focusing on distal variables versus focusing on lived experiences. It is therefore quite critical to understand lived experiences. I know I'm behind on time, so I will be very quick, right? In 2016, right, I wrote a Straits Times article. These are, of course, op-eds, so they are not scientific articles. But I want to share a secret with you. All my op-eds are based on science, right? Basically, look at the empirical findings of what behavioral scientists tell us, and then I try to translate it into very normal, unscientific or non-scientific terms. But many of the things that I say in these articles are actually practical applications of what I believe the evidence say. So in 2016, I came out with, that's where I really started thinking about what I just shared with you today, right? And I said, I think the most proximate things that really matter is to find out the components of lived experiences that constitute or affect a meaningful life. And I described these 5 Cs that you see on the slide. Don't have to memorize them. They are available in the Straits Times article in 2016. Very quickly, I think these are the 5 Cs that all of us can ask ourselves, do we have them? How high are we on each of them? Complementarity is whatever you do now at your workplace, especially or as a student, does this really match what you want to do? What I'm doing, is that what I want to do? The higher or the stronger that is complement, that's going to be contribute more to the way that you find your life purposeful and meaningful. But complement here refers to similarities between what you do, but it also refers to the demands and needs, right? If this work has certain demands, and then I'm able to meet those demands, or I have certain needs, and this job provide me meet those needs of mine, then there is also a complementary fit, right, between the two. So complementarity is really about fitting or matching based on similarity or based on needs and demands and so on. Okay. The second C of lived experiences that I share is about congruence. And I think this is, many of you will experience this very personally, right? Can you really, for most of the time, present yourself and present yourself and be who you really are, right? There's a missing a beat there. Can you, to the extent that if my life is such that for most of the time, of course, we cannot be foolhardy and say everything that goes on in our mind. We have to be adaptive, be practically intelligent, and so on. But if for most of the time, how I put on my public image is similar to my personal true self and personal image, and I see no conflict, then the more likely I'm going to find my life purposeful, meaningful, and I'm going to make sense of my life and have a better comprehension. Commitment refers to the fact that, are there goals in my life that are clear, specific, realistic, challenging, that I can try and meet, and I'm trying to meet them and progressing them in a sustained manner. Right? In other words, things require effort, but there are things that I want to do, and there's a clear goal for me to reach. And that's a sense of commitment, and you're doing that, that's going to contribute to your meaning in life. Contribution refers to the fact that's the self-transcendent altruistic sense, right? Whatever I do, can I say that, oh, it matters now? I have existential mattering because I find that what I do actually help people, or I can make a positive difference to society, either because of the work you volunteer, the volunteer work doing some good cause, or maybe you're a social worker and you find that in your everyday, you're actually solving people's problem and making a positive difference to parenting behavior and so on. Right? Or you're a policy maker, or you're a scientist, when you can begin to say that, hey, I am making a difference, a positive impact to people around me or to society in general, then you are much more likely to be experiencing a high MIL, meaning in life. Final C is about community. The fact that, I have a good group of friends, or it can be in the church, it can be in a it can be in a secular setting, right? A group of people that I have bonds with. Maybe we have a common hobby group, for example, and we have quality relationship. Because we are social animals, the fact that we can be high in a sense of community, that's the fifth component that I described, right, that affects meaning in life. So what I'm trying to say really is that we have not been examining our predictors in this lived experiences sense, and I suggested these 5 experiences in 2016. Some of you would have heard of blue zones. Then Bucknell, the famous author who wrote the book about blue zones, and now there are blue zones 2.0, talking about Singapore and so on. Actually, he first published the book, I think around 2016, version 1. He came to Singapore, he interviewed the then Prime Minister, and he talked to a few people. He also interviewed me because of my work in well-being and meaning in life and so on. And he actually cited this article in his book, right? So if you go look at the book, there's a whole box on Singapore featuring, and his suggestion happened to be what I am trying to advocate, that we need to go beyond our 5 Cs. Your traditional 5C, you know what the 5Cs are, right? Your car, your cash, I don't pursue that, so I don't know now. Your country club, your credit card, and so on, right? The condominium, right? The 5Cs that people who are born in the 60s, 70s, and 80s always talk about. And what we are talking about here is that you need a new 5Cs, right, in terms of these lived experiences, and not just think about the concrete materialistic 5Cs if you want to think about meaning in life. Of course, I went on looking at the research to say, so what are some of the obstacles on meaning in life and how we need to avoid it because of unhealthy competition. Interestingly, these are the kinds of things that Prime Minister Wong and others have been trying to emphasize, right, including our education minister, about how sometimes if you focus too much on comparisons and competition, right, it really can be negative, have a negative impact on your meaning in life. Okay, I still have a bit of time. So I am not going to show you detailed results. I predicted that we won't have the time for that. I want to show you some very preliminary findings, but I think robust findings, right, that supporting what I just said to you. Now, in my ongoing research, this is to frighten our PhD students, right? I have a big framework with all the mediators, moderators you can think of that we have studied, with including well-being, resources, and so on. So what I'm sharing with you is not the complete usual big model that we try to understand meaning in life, right? I have sliced out that model for this purpose of this presentation, to look at meaning in life as the criterion outcome, look at the 5 C's of lived experiences as proximate causes, and try to show you how I can empirically validate such a concept that we should, and it is better off looking at lived experiences as proximate predictors, right? As opposed to further away like personality and so on. Now, this is quite, I think, useful for scholars, scientists. If you want to validate something that I just said, right? If you want to validate something that's proximate to a criterion of interest, something that's multidimensional, I argue that you need to show, in an ideal sense, you need to provide evidence in 5 different types of hypotheses, and that's what I did, right, in my my ongoing research. And I'm sharing with you a little bit of those findings, which of course will need to be validated with a larger population, because I look at undergraduates in the first instance, several hundred of them. But first, if I say those 5 C's are proximate causes, then I must be able to show you that I can measure these 5 C's reliably. I must have reasonable Cronbach alpha, and they must be positively correlated since they all contribute in the same direction to meaning in life. And they should also be moderate because they are distinct, right? Otherwise, I am just reframing things and they are not distinct. I'm just saying 5C for the sake of 5Cs. So my first task in empirical validation is to be able to show you that I can develop a measure whereby not only the Cronbach alphas, meaning the internal consistency reliabilities are high, I must have a positive correlation among these 5 experiences that I talk about, and they should be moderately, not too highly correlated, but not close to 0, of course. Second, I must be able to show that these 5 new things that I've come up with, right, or at least things that I reframe, I must have convergent and discriminant validity with external variables. So when I link them with things like personality or self-determination needs, I must be able to show that those things that conceptually they should relate will have a higher correlation. Those things that they should not relate, they will have a very low or 0 correlation, right? That's your basic construct validation in psychometrics. Third, a kind of evidence that I should need to provide, right, if you want to do what I do, i.e. 5 proximate multidimensional causes, I would argue that you need to show that each of these 5 components, they should predict meaning in life, right, positively and in some substantive way, get maybe a 0.3 at least correlation. But they also provide incremental prediction over and above the rest of the 5, meaning the 4. So for all 5, I must be able to pick out any one and show you that even though I have a prediction from 4 of them, my 5th one still matter. I must do that for each of my 5 in order to justify why I have 5 experiences, right? As opposed to why not 4, why not 3, right? This is the principle of parsimony and a significant incremental prediction. The fourth thing I think we need to show, right, if you're going to take such an approach in your own research, is that, well, I want my 5 C's to be robust, right? I want to show my lived experiences are proximate causes, right? Then surely this must be very significant pattern. If it is so proximate that once you are high, you have meaning in life, then it should generalize. It should generalize across gender. It should generalize across different socio-economic backgrounds. It should generalize across religion, because whether you have a religion or not, if you have these experiences, you should have high meaning in life, right? It should also provide incremental predictive validity to things that are more further away, because now you are proximate. And because you are proximate, it should also mediate things that are further away, their causal effects on the criterion, because you are proximate, right? If you are proximate to the outcome, and then you are proximate, so you are caused by a distal variable, you must be a mediating variable, right? So those of you who are good in research design know completely what I just said, right? These are the various things you need to show, right? If you want to claim that you have robust, proximate causes of meaning in life. And finally, the most ambitious one, my 5 Cs must be able to make a difference. Can it, for example, to be used in a way that will clarify the confusion that I talk about in gratitude and meaning in life, search for meaning and meaning in life, and so on. To the extent that it can open up new perspectives, right? Then the 5 Cs are definitely worth considering. All right, because of time, I go through this very fast with you. This is not the only empirical study, of course, but it's the more complete initial one that I can share with you. So I started off, we were looking at 400 undergraduates, right, first, and they all completed a standardized questionnaire measuring the 5 experiences that I talked about. It was quite easy to develop items for the 5 because they are very clear things about whether things match, you belong to a community, and so on, right? Those who are interested can talk to me privately about the actual items. Basically, I have 5 clean items measuring each of the 5 Cs. So in total, I have 25 items. I also included measures of social desirability responding because I know reviewers who criticize and say, oh, people are trying to fake good, right? They're just trying to manage impression. So I have 2 measures. One is impression management. That's the faking good measure. If you score high on this, most likely you are just faking good. You're not answering the items truthfully, right? In other words, you say you are better than you are and you know you are telling a lie. That is impression management. Self-delusion is the other aspect of social desirable responding, right? This refers to the fact that you are telling me a higher score than you truly are, but you are mistaken that you don't know, so you are deluded, right? So in other words, you are not good, but you think you are good, right? And so you are still wrong, but you are honest, you're telling what you thought is the truth, but actually you are not telling the truth. Okay, so those are the 2 established dimensions of social desirability responding. Very importantly, I want to share with you the findings that I'll show you very briefly is that they generalize across demographics, right? Whether it is age or gender or religion, and background variables like household income, which I also asked our undergraduates to give an estimate. And the conclusions that I'll show you here actually are not affected by SDR, right? Social desirability responding, which is going to be important, when it gets reviewed by peers, right, for publication. The hypothesis that I have, right, all the 5 broad things that I think we should do, you can think about them in terms of a specific hypothesis between the 5 types of things that you should do. They are basically supported. And I'll just give you illustrative examples on how they look like, right? Of course, I plan to replicate this and there will be more hypotheses coming forth. And there will be then a full model of meaning in life that I won't have time and bandwidth, and it's not appropriate to share it here anyway, right? And I'll test that in my community and population samples. And some of the students, I know at least one already interested in some of these things in the big model, right? Which have things like anticipatory effects from your emotions and so on. This is only 1 or 2 tables that I'll show. The rest I will provide you linguistic summary of the findings to make it easier. Okay, very quickly, the first thing I said, right? Can I measure them reliably? Yes. The diagonals are the Cronbach alpha internal consistency reliability. They are high and higher than most of the things that we accept for publication in top journals. Bear in mind, this doesn't mean it's unidimensional. Cronbach alpha does not assume unidimensionality. I hope we all know that. Right, it just simply tell you to the extent that the items correlate and they can be multiple indicators measuring the same thing. The correlations are all significant, right? At the p.001, don't need to be too impressed by the significance, right? 400 people, you will always get statistical significance of most things. More important to look at the effect sizes. And our correlations are what I expected. Generally, they are in the 0.3s. There are some slightly lower in 0.2 and one in 0.52. And if you look at it, it makes sense that contribution and community tend to be more highly correlated because you can contribute to a community and then you tend to have both a sense of community and a sense of contribution. But in general, the 5 can be reliably measured. They are positively correlated and they are moderately correlated, right? Suggesting internally that from an internal validity viewpoint that they are distinct variables moving in the same direction. I then did a CFA confirmatory factor analysis, right? A multiple group one, singular then multiple group for those interested. Right? It supported this hypothesized correlated 5C factor structure model, validated across 2 independent samples that are randomly assigned, right? And then I've demonstrated measurement equivalence in terms of, to make it simple, it means that the items measure the same thing with the same precision in the same way, right, across independently. So we have some independent evidence that this is what the structure should be. Second thing that I need to show, which I showed, is that there are convergent validity and discriminant validity. In other words, my 5Cs, each of them should correlate with things that should correlate and not correlate with things that conceptually they should not correlate. These are some examples, right, which we also measured in our questionnaire. We find that for conceptually related traits, pairs between the trait and the C, such as commitment being a C and conscientiousness, they are related, and you will get actually a moderate positive correlation. And in line with the literature, the experiences also correlate with things that should predict meaning in life, such as self-esteem, affect, and so on. The 5Cs, therefore, are not random, neither are they just everything that correlate with anything, because I was able to show that it does not correlate with age, sex, household income, or conceptually unrelated traits, right? Such as putting two traits together, a trait and a lived experience together, they have no conceptual relationship, they should not correlate. So what we have done here for those psychometricians, where we have provided you convergent and discriminant validity, which is the typical gold standard for external construct validation. Third kinds of evidence, right? What I've tried to show is that each of my 5 components should predict meaning in life, even though I already have information on the other 4. Remember, I said that for parsimony, if any one of them is useless after I already know 4, why should I bother to have the 5th one, right? So I have to do and show you that for each one of them, even though you give me 4, tell me their values. If I know the 5th value, it does matter. So how do you do that? You first look at the zero order correlation, and it shows that it predicts. Then you do a series of different analysis, and I just use multiple hierarchical regression as the example. That's the easiest for most of us here, right? And I was able to show that each of the 5 of them that you see, they provided incremental predictive validity, right, for meaning in life, even after knowing the prediction already provided by the other 4. And that is actually a very conservative test, right? It's very hard to say something is relevant only if it predicts over and above 4 other things that it has some relationship with. And this is what we found. I don't have it here, but I can show you that actually my 5Cs predicted as a whole much bigger than the big five traits put together. So you have a comparison. I have 5 construct personality, you have 5 constructs, right? When I put in all the 5 personality constructs, actually each of my 5Cs predicted incrementally over and above the entire personality factor structure, right? But the reverse is not true at all. Okay, quickly 2 more, and then we are done. This 2 a little bit elaborate. Sorry for the confusion over the speed of which I'm going through. I recall that I say that for my 5Cs to be robust and proximate causes influencing our meaning in life, I must be able to show you several patterns with very clear results, right, in terms of the magnitude. I mean, if they are so proximate, then the magnitude should be at least stronger, right, than things that are more distal. If they are so proximate, then the other things really doesn't matter. So my relationship in terms of the direction and magnitude should generalize across different values of other variables. If they are so proximate, it must provide incremental prediction over and above other things that you have which are not as proximate. If they are so proximate, then it must be the mediating variable between the things that are more distal and the and the outcome variable. So in other words, I need to show you all these different robust patterns that will exist in my sample. Right? So let me show you some examples. For those who are interested, right, because it's not easy to accept the fact that you need to move away from unidimensional traits, right, to experiences. So I want to show you all the different ways of looking at the data. Right, so the first thing I found is that when I compare with the distal variables, right, the very established personality big 5, which we measured, and self-determination needs, such as autonomy, the sense of competence and relatedness, the famous 3 Cs, the famous 3 SD needs, self-determination needs. I was able to show that each of my 5 experiences, the Cs, components of lived experiences, whether individually or as a set, they actually have higher magnitudes of the predictive validity compared to all these other distal variables. So that's the first thing, right? I was able to show relative magnitude. Second thing, we were able to show that for each of the experience, the nature and the magnitude, right, the way it predicts and the extent to which it predicts, actually using a regression with enough statistical power, I managed to find that the relationship hold across individual differences in a vast variety of traits, whether it is self-esteem, personality, and so on. Even in things that are somewhere between traits and situation or states, such as taking people's perspective or being grateful. Being grateful can be both a trait or a state, right? And it can be also due to the situation. You're being brought up in an environment, you're being encouraged to be grateful by the minister, and you start thinking about gratefulness, or you write a grateful diary and so on. So even when I look at all these different levels of people on this, I find that my 5Cs, magnitude and nature, generalizes across that, right? So there's equivalence in generalizability terms, right? Two more. We also found that the 5Cs, again, both individually as a set, they can predict over and above the other predictors that we talk about. So even if I know your religiosity, I know how grateful you are, I know your personality, right? Knowing one or more of my 5Cs still help, because I can still provide a stronger prediction, right, of your meaning in life. And that has to be so if they are really proximate causes. And the final one, maybe not the final, but another one to show you here is that the 5Cs are also mediators. Without going into details, when I start putting the distal variables and the outcome is meaning in life, I was able to show each one of the 5Cs are significant mediators of the causal relationship between the distal variable and the meaning in life, right? And that is shown regardless of which mediation analysis you use, right? Whether you use the bootstrap, Hayes process, hierarchical regression, and so on. And finally, I think almost finally, as I said, I was able to show, and rather I found that the 5Cs influence subjective well-being, right? And these effects is mediated also by meaning in life, because we already know that meaning in life contribute or influences subjective well-being. So I should be able to show, if they are approximate, my 5Cs also affect well-being through meaning in life partially, right? While it can also affect well-being independent of meaning in life, and we found that. Okay, final set of results, the more complex one, so I will have to be brief here. Can knowing the 5Cs, taking my suggested approach, make any difference at all? And does it contribute to scientific in way research do not look at? I would argue that it can, right? And I just have a message where I'm trying to see that. Yeah, I think I just accidentally pressed the speaker. But okay, I hope you heard me in the last few minutes. What I'm trying to show now here is that it can make a scientific difference in producing insights and practical difference in making evidence-based recommendations. Now, I will have to be brief on this. Think about it now. If I know about the component of your life experiences now, I realize that actually having a particular life experience, like being who I am, right, that life experience actually can fulfill my multiple needs. I can do things the way I want, the way I do, that's autonomy, right? I can actually carry on doing things and doing it well, that's competence, right? I can relate to the people and express myself, that's relatedness. So just from one life experiences, it actually can fulfill your multiple needs. And each of your multiple needs actually can be fulfilled in different ways by different experiences. Now, that's a very important point. It means that I do not have to try to group people according to your values on unitary constructs. Practically, it can't be done anyway. Even in personnel selection, right? David Chian is David Chian. He scores differently on his big five. You cannot really group me on my level on extroversion and deal with me. You have to deal with me as a person, right? So in actual decisions, you cannot deal with people in terms of unitary traits and your value. But in complex experience, in life experience as a policymaker or as a scientist, I can talk about your component of life experience and deal with that, such as having a sense of community. I can talk about creating opportunities for you to be part of a community, right? So now I can actually intervene. I can actually make prediction and about approximate life experiences of the whole person without worrying, breaking up the person into different unitary constructs and having to make different recommendations because my poor guy scored differently on different constructs. Okay, this is something that is quite hard to understand, right? I think I will encourage, especially for students and others, to think through this carefully of what that means, right? Of the way we do science normally. Let me skip this because of time. I want to say 2-3 things and end, because I think these are important things which some of us care about a lot. I know many of you will ask me, what about religion? Well, remember we say meaning in life is not meaning of life, but I want to clarify that meaning of life your belief in meaning of life can drive your meaning in life, right? And that's why research found that people with no religion, when compared with people with religion in general, just focusing on the mean, right? People with religion tend to have a higher meaning in life, a sense of meaning in life compared with people with no religion. And among people with religion, if you measure them according to their religiosity, how important they are, the religion to them, the way they engage in the religion. So you could be a Christian, but among Christians, right, you have different religiosity levels among Christians, right? When you do that, you also find that people who are more religious tend to have a higher meaning in life. And we find that that is true, right? They are positively correlated with meaning in life. But what is important is that my 5C experiences, when I analyze them and I compare with my religion scores and religiosity scores in my sample, they are both overlapping, which they should, because having religion and religiosity should contribute to meaning in life by having sense of experiences. If you go to church often, you will have a sense of community, right? Your church people that you hang out with, and therefore the life experiences will be enhanced. At the same time, you can have a hobby group, a photography group, right, without being a Christian or going to church, and therefore your community can also be enhanced independent of any religion or religiosity. And true enough, you get the same pattern, right? You will find that you begin to understand now that it's not an either or. I can look at religion, religiosities, its contribution to MIL, meaning in life, through the various experiences that may occur. But these experiences can come from multiple sources and need not come only from religion and religiosity. Right? That is a new way of looking at religion, religiosity, and MIL, right? By bringing in life experiences that the research has never looked into, both sociological and psychological research. Another example that how I think it clarifies if you look at 5Cs, right? Again, I've said this, my 5Cs can look at the majority of the population. I'm not restricted to only married people, for example, or people with children, right? I can now look at everybody, right? If I am just going to study only satisfaction with family to predict MIL, which I can, I am restricted because then I can't really have a score on people who don't have a family to begin with. And there will be many of us actually don't really have this score on satisfaction with family in the traditional sense. I can't possibly go through all these technical details with you. Let me just summarize all these wordy slides, right? They are wordy because you need to really explain the relationships between them. You don't have to look at the slides, that is too wordy. Let me just explain this to you, right? Help me and graphically imagine in your mind. You have gratitude on your left, you have meaning in life on your right. Research has robustly, or rather, sorry, research has consistently, right, said that gratitude is great. Gratitude contributes to meaning in life and all, right? There is a sense of belief by the researchers that gratitude has a causal effect on meaning in life. Now, what I have found and what I suggest is that actually you have an observed correlation between gratitude and meaning in life. Part of this may be causal indeed. Being grateful may actually help you to have a meaning in life that is higher. But it is likely to be bi-directional. If I find my life being meaningful, I will also be grateful for the life I have. So meaning in life can also cause gratitude. But more importantly, what I want to say is that parts of this observed association may be spurious. In other words, the reason you see a relationship between gratitude and meaning in life is one, maybe gratitude causes MIL, two, maybe MIL causes gratitude, but three, and very importantly, my research shows that they are actually some spurious component, and that is they are both effects of a common cause, and that common cause are those lived experiences. In other words, if I live my experiences, if David Chian has a job that he really finds a good fit for him, he will then be grateful. He will then have strong meaning in life. It doesn't mean his gratitude causes meaning in life. It means he got a good fitting job, you see? So once you identify the 5 proximate causes, you will realize that those are the omitted variables that may actually contribute to an observed association between gratitude and MIL. I'm not saying gratitude is not important. What I'm saying that we may have oversold, researchers may have oversold the causal effect or the causal efficacy of gratitude on MIL, well, without realizing that MIL can cause gratitude, and more importantly, there's a spurious component because both can be just byproducts or consequences, right, of the lived experiences that we have. Okay, I am truly quite done, right? The meaning in life and the search for meaning will also be clarified now. I don't have to worry about positive search, negative search, what happened. I can just, in fact, look at the 2 by 2. If I have low search, low meaning, low search, high meaning, or high search, low meaning, or high search, high meaning. Right? So Stiger talk about this 2x2 classification, and there's a lot of problem with this classification. Now, I don't have to have a particular dictatorship decision on how you should fare and you should feel in each of these quadrants, right? Low, low, high, high, low, high, high, low. All I need to do is to look at these 4 quadrants, and within each quadrant, I'm able to look at my sample and look at your different combination of your life experiences. And that means that in each quadrant, it's not a unitary group of people. There are not 4 groups of people. When you combine search for meaning and meaning together, you don't produce 4 groups, different groups of homogeneous, within group homogeneous people. Right? You have provide simply means 4 groups of people who have particular meaning level, and are they searching or not. And within each of these groups, there can be full of heterogeneous group of individuals having different combinations of life experiences. And those are the kind of experiences that they live, how they score, will tell us how they feel, like whether their search is going to be adaptive or maladaptive, and so on. Okay, I think I'll skip this, right, because of time. Basically, when you start bringing meaning in life and SWB together, things will become really much more clearer. Okay, I hope my speaker was quite on in the last 5 minutes, because I noticed that it might be a bit soft. This is the really last slide. Meaning in life matters to me as a person, as an academic, as a researcher, as a practitioner, as someone who works for 30 years trying to give scientific advice to the government, as someone who are engaged in various communities. Right? I believe that meaning in life is something that all of us have a sense of, something that we all want. We may or may not be actively searching. It is desirable in itself. It also affects other desirable ends. And it is a very good, sustained and sustainable counter to negativity, and it helps us with the resilience, which means we really must get it right. We must model all these meaning matters, and how we model meaning also matters. And what I've done, right, is to suggest to you that there are serious limitations that we need to be aware of. So before anybody tell you about meaning in life based on evidence, do take a second look and think about perhaps one way is to start looking at life experiences as a proximate cause, right? And I will be doing more work on this. I'll be probably working with some of you also, looking at how we can generalize this and expand the model into more variables, make it more dynamic, also include, of course, samples beyond undergraduate, so that you get a wider range of values on all the variables that matter. All right, now at any one time now, this comes to the end of the presentation. I know it's a tough time for most of you, but I just want to make sure I get a chance to share with you of what I feel. Right, as I go through some of the type questions, if any one of you have a question, please raise your hand, and my colleague will unmute you so that you can ask the questions verbally, right? So that I get to hear you and not just always hearing myself, right? So please raise your hand if you want to, and then my colleague will take a look, will have to unmute you. Which one are we looking at? All right, while waiting, I have a question here that says, I think some of you can read also. I have a question here that says, can meaning in life change over time? Example, when one facing a change in life circumstances, blah, 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 and so on. And then is meaning of life stagnant? And what about things like war and oppression? Okay, so this question basically asks the stability and change of meaning in life, right? While the meaning in life literature is not explicit on it, I think it is quite clear among all the authors. They do assume that meaning in life is not static. So the individual differences in the scores of meaning in life is not the same as the way that personality is fixed. And that explains why personality cannot predict in meaning in life very strongly, because meaning in life is not static like personality is. Like meaning in life is dependent on the circumstances. And that's why if you go and advocate and take my life experiences, your meaning in life will change over time in accordance with the life experiences change over time. How each of the 5 C's change over time should be able to affect how your meaning of life change. And the way that this way should affect could be, of course, moderated by other conceptually relevant variables. Right? Whoever who asks this question, if you're interested, right, that's the kind of research that I hope my bigger framework of modeling meaning will lead to, right? To find out how meaning in life changes, not just in the a theoretical fashion, but according to lived experiences. And then the second part of that question was schizophrenia and war. Yeah, sure, right? In very difficult things that affect your things like schizophrenia or depression, of course, it affects all your judgments, and that should affect how you experience your life. And therefore, your perceived experience, your lived experiences should be affected by major, personality disorders or major life events like war or the death of a loved one, or like if you have, or if you lost a limb, or you go blind. Now, all these, of course, will affect your meaning in life. I just want to say, though, while this is important, I really want to focus on the larger population whereby we are not talking about life-changing, drastic negative events, because on a day-to-day basis, we still have meaning of life that we are evaluating and re-evaluating, right? You don't have to, even while you wait for the big life event to change, while you're waiting, it could be 5, 10, 20 years, right? Surely during that period, you want to live a meaningful life. And that's where my research want to focus on, right? On how to enhance that meaning in life under routine times, not just under bad times. Okay, I'm trying to read off another question. This question says, I wonder if these research methods, assuming the methods I've described, can be used to show insights on people who are neurodivergent and have a different brain, example, autistic people. I'm assuming that these studies assume no neurodivergence. But if I put the question more generally, yeah, I'm assuming a normal functioning brain, but the research can also, the framework does not preclude people with dysfunctional or who are outliers, right? So you can have a very dysfunctional brain or a very dysfunctional life, a very dysfunctional personality, a very outlier positive or negative experience. That would also come under lived experiences, and that should have extreme effects on your meaning in life as well. It should, right? Of course, if you are saying that my brain is so affected that I cannot process the meaning in life, then that's a different story. What we are saying is that to the extent that anything can affect my lived experiences, it should have a very direct effect, a very strong effect on my meaning in life. Will the slides be shared? That's another question. That's not a substantive question. This is video recorded. I will put up the video onto my faculty YouTube, my professional, not personal, my professional faculty YouTube. From there, you'll be able to revisit this whole thing, so you will be able to see the slides anyway, right? So yes, it is available to anyone who choose to go and rewatch this video. Are there any downsides? That's another question. Are there any downsides to having very high levels of meaning in life? Is it more always better? Well, this is a wonderful question. I wrote an article that when virtue becomes vice in the Straits Times, and I talk about sometimes confidence is great, right? But overconfidence is bad, correct? Autonomy is great, right? But if you start burning my flag, I don't think that's a very nice thing, right? So in every good adaptive trait, research has shown that when you are very, very high, to the extent that it becomes maladaptive on some other important traits, then it is negative. The question then is meaning in life that or not? Now, meaning in life is not a personality trait, it's not a judgment, it's not a virtue or a vice, but it is an overall evaluation. To the extent that if we are very happy, we think we have a very fulfilling life, we are more likely to continue the life and live the way we are. Now, if you can think of a scenario whereby somebody have a high sense of meaning in life, but that life is bad for him or her or for the people around, then yes, that will be an instance where high meaning in life is bad. Because high meaning in life will cause you to continue to remain or pursue the similar kinds of life, right? So if you can come up with examples that meaning in life might be great, in a sense, subjective experience, but actually, if your meaning in life, does affect others, and if affecting others negatively is a bad thing, then meaning in life is bad. Ultimately, because we are interconnected people, ultimately, if you affect other people so badly, that should come back to haunt you, right? So by right, you will still suffer in the end, right? So it's not like forever you have high meaning in life and happy, everybody around you suffer, right? In a normal world, especially you are not the most powerful person on earth, it is more likely you're going to come back to haunt you in different ways, such as your sense of community, your feeling of contribution will be negative, and then your life experiences will go down, your meaning in life therefore will also go down. So I think humans are generally adaptive. you know, it is not so easy to have very high meaning in life consistently and be negative, right? I think it can be negative, but quite soon, perhaps, you know, you come to realize there are things that you might need to change, and then you reevaluate and so on. So your meaning in life, the sources of your meaning can then swap and then go and become some other else. I think I got the last question that I can read off. How might the role of mindfulness make an impact in the qualitative measure of life experience? Well, life experience is both a qualitative and quantitative, right? I have 5 different different types of life experience. I measure them with 5 items on the Likert scale. I then compute my means, variances, and do my usual stuff. So it's a qualitative construct, actually measured quantitatively. Mindfulness is a bit hard. I'm not an expert in mindfulness. We have a few colleagues in SMU that do very good mindfulness research, and some even practice, right? So I personally cannot offhand see a direct relationship. I would say that to the extent that mindful helps you focus, helps you realize what is in the present, help you give attention. To the extent that focusing, giving attention helps you to do your job properly, you may have a good fit. You might you might realize that you might have the emotional awareness that you're offending your friends, so you stop saying negative things and you start saying good things. That's going to build your sense of community, going to make your impact being stronger. So in a sense, of course, mindfulness being an adaptive trait, like all other adaptive traits, can help to contribute to the positivity, right, of each of the 5 life experiences. But that's not unique to mindfulness, right? Situation, judgment, ability, practical intelligence, perspective taking, right? Emotional skillfulness, emotional awareness. All these things should be able to function in the same way that mindfulness can function. Okay, I have a long question here. I will try to summarize. Question from Pan. He said, will the predicting power of each C vary across individuals at the different stages of their lives and have different roles to play? Will the predicting power of each fee be affected by the environment? And so on. Yeah. Okay. So I think if I can reframe Pan your question, you are basically saying that now I have 5 C's. Each of them, of course, seems to predict well, good. They can predict over and above good. And the purpose was to show you that maybe that's why they do so, because they are indeed proximate causes. I would like to think that because they are proximate causes, there's nothing much in between them. Unlike personality, from personality to meaning in life, I have to go through a causal chain of different variables. And different variables, remember, they are caused by multiple causes, not only by the preceding variable in your causal chain. Right? And it sounds complicated. If you draw a line from A causes B, B causes C, C causes D, your B and C in the causal chain are caused not only by A and B, they're caused by other arrows that are not in your model. Right? And because these B and C can change anytime, over different circumstances, your A prediction on your final outcome is going to vary tremendously depending on all these other things that can affect your intervening variables. Now, if I say, and that's why I'm claiming that meaningful life experiences are the most proximate causes of of meaning in life, then it is going to be quite hard for them to be high and then suddenly become low. In other words, if being a sense of community should help meaning in life, it should always more or less help, regardless whether I'm young or old, right? Because they are things that matter. Will it differ across individuals? Yes, right? I think for some of us, we are fine to not be part of a community, but we love to have a job that fits us. Then you will find complementarity more important to you than, say, community and so on. But by and large, right, my argument is that human beings find these 5 life experiences or life experiences important. They want it. I think all of us want a job that fit. All of us want to be able to be who we are. That's congruence. We want to have jobs. We have to have progress towards goals. That's commitment. We want to have a sense of contribution that our life matter. And we also want to be part of a community of some sort, right? Where that we can have the some sense of relatedness. I would think that all of us want all these 5 things. It is quite possible that over time, if I'm not lacking in a community, I have already plenty, then perhaps I'm not in a hurry to try to find a sense of community. And at that time of my life, I might be more interested to find a job fit and so on. So some of us in the audience might find that you hate your current job. And to you, that's the most important, right? Yes, when you're outside your job in the weekend, you go to church, you go to a photography group, you're happy. Then Monday blues come, Sunday night come, you're terrible again. So for 5 days, you cannot be with your friends. For that 5 days, your life experience of your job fit is going to be the most important thing to you. Well, when you start to retire, then the job fitting disappear, right? In a way, then there are other things that, such as your life experiences of making an impact, can become more important. So through life stages, you can come up with a life course theory that says that for certain people or certain stages of life, some of our C's might have more impact than others. Having said that, I want to suggest that all of us, I think, five all the C's important. Nadia, yes, Nadia, raise your hand. So go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask the question. And I've just finished, I think, the list of written questions. So that's just nice. Nadia?
Hi, Prof. Thanks for the whole presentation. It's super interesting. Something I wanted to ask about your congruence construct, right? Is that so you're talking about how people find meaning when they manage to present themselves in a way that is consistent with, like, let's say, their internal sense of self. But what about, like, what do you think of people who they are already aware that they don't like themselves, or maybe people who they value a certain image that is not what they think themselves as, then
Yeah.
for them, wouldn't having congruence be something that is negative for their meaning in life and for their well-being?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question and hypothesis, right? I think what Nadia, if I understand you correctly, is saying that maybe for some of us, we don't want to be who we are, right? Maybe for some of us, our private image, and we know who we are, is the guy or a person that actually will be disliked by others. You will unfriend me if you know who I am, right? Basically. And therefore, I want to maintain that public image, who you thought I am, and that's not what I am. And so you are saying that now I have a problem. My congruence is low because now I am not who I am. Now I cannot behave like who I truly am. But what I am matters. Now I would argue that it's not what you are, your public image that matters, but it's the consequences of what you get from that public image. Come again, I would argue that actually what matters is not that the public image per se, but the pluses that you think that comes along with the desired public image. So I may be, say, for example, if I am going to stand for election, right, in a general election, and by the way, I'm definitely not, but let's suppose I'm going to stand for a general election, then my public image becomes very important, right? I want to make sure that, oh, I don't have anything that you guys can dig out about me and so on. Then I may also, when I start go and meet the people and I will act in a way that are quite different from who I truly am. I will not say outright things that I like or dislike. I will not even tell you my hobbies. Right? I might tell you all the things that you want to hear. And that's because when I do all that, I think I'm going to get your vote. You're going to like me. So it is the likability and the consequence of that public image that matter, and not the state of being in that public image. So according to psychology, right, you still feel bad about being a person that you are truly are not, right? Regardless of how you are, because it takes effort, right? You have to deal with that mismatch and congruence. But perhaps what sustains that behavior and the adaptive part of it is that it brings forth for you positive outcomes. You get elected, you get liked. And that's why many of us, I say in this general, continue to be not who we are. Right. Another example is the case of people who are LGBT. Right. No matter how in which country you are, being LGBT is difficult, right? And so some person who is an LGBT might actually cannot and don't want to be known to you that he or she is LGBT, and that doesn't mean that the person want to be non-LGBT. It just means that the cost is too great for them to be who, so they need to maintain that. But the person will continue to experience the incongruence, and that life experience is probably going to be have a negative effect of MIL in general, right? Meaning in life in general. So yeah, I agree with you, Nadia, that sometimes I think what you have said can explain why we want to continue to be incongruent. I argue that, well, it can only continue and it continue because there are other self-serving reasons to do so, but you are not in a wonderful state. You are still incongruent, right? I think most of us would love to be who we are, right? Although it doesn't mean that we will go ahead and do it. Brandon, you have a question?
Hi, Prof. Chian, Brendan here. So yeah, I really like the use your use of like lived experience as like the proximate causes of meaning in life, right? So I was just wondering, besides the empirical evidence that you showed, are there like theoretical guidelines that you would propose or are going to propose to kind of differentiate like lived experience from like other constructs? For example, like during the talk, I was thinking like, the self-determination needs like competence, autonomy, relatedness. They also sound a bit like lived experience to me. But you seem to have put them like as distal variables. So I'm wondering if there is some guidelines for when is something a lived experience and when is it
Right. So autonomy is not a multidimensional. Autonomy is quite neatly described as, oh, I can do the things I want, right? But job fit is multidimensional because job fit could be I can do the things I want, but it could also be I don't have freedom. Some of us don't want jobs to have freedom. We always romanticize autonomy. There are some people who love being in jobs where there are clear rules and I don't have to make decisions. And you tell me how to do it, I don't have to do it anyhow I like because I realize I may have to answer for it later, right? So if you deal enough with in consulting, you deal with jobs. There are a lot of people, a lot of jobs where you tell them autonomy, they will not score high, and they don't want high autonomy. So job fit will take care of that, right? The idea of complementarity will does not require you to be high in autonomy. Most of you are, but if you are low in autonomy, you will want a job that is low in autonomy. But the idea of complementarity also go to competence. When I can do things that I want to, I'm more likely to do it well, and I will feel competent, right? So the lived experience actually embedded in it by conceptualization has multiple sources from which it derives, such as autonomy or such as extroversion and other things, right? It by nature, it cannot be derived from only one particular source. It even need not say that you must be high in autonomy. It need not. You can be low in autonomy because you want to, and then you complement you, and that's fine. You should have high MIL. And that explains why your autonomy cannot be always super high predictive of MIL, because sometimes low autonomy does, for some people, lead to high MIL. Okay. Any more questions? I can take about 2 or 3 more. Okay, I have one question from someone that says, don't have to mention my name. The question says, if I were to design a follow-up research, example, a grant proposal to take on this topic further, like meaning in life, and we're being tasked to ensure that this research is more applied or maybe translational, where would you recommend we begin? Do you see any prospects for any possible interventions that could follow? Any levers to prioritize, and so on? Okay, I understand the question. This person is asking a question, say, suppose I need to get a research grant, and this grant agency wants something that is, not just top publication, but really can make a change to policy or practice. Very industry-based, very policy-based, very business practice-based. Where do you begin? Well, I'll begin with, how about beginning with Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, right? Well, where we are very clear that we are now saying that, it's not the 5 C's that matter. He didn't say the 5 lived experiences, but he has read the article I know that I wrote in 2016. And what he and others are all saying for quite long already are saying that we really want to go beyond materialistic thing to find and live a life that's meaningfully, however we define it. And because that meaning in life has so much practical outcomes in terms of physical outcomes and mental well outcomes, if you do a utility analysis, it is free, right? I can increase, if you believe the science and if the science is good, you can actually increase people's meaning in life through many interventions that are relatively free, just encourage people to go communities to make an impact, to think through and reflect. These are things which actually doesn't cost money. But if it does affect your bottom line in terms of your physical outcomes, your health, all this, it's going to have utility analysis. So I will start with approaching the grant by telling the grant agencies that currently, practically, this is what concerns society or policymakers, right? And we are in this state. This is what we want to do. And meaning in life is something that will lead to all these things that matter to us. And it does lead it in a way that actually does not require expensive intervention. So from a cost-benefit analysis, if I can understand how to change meaning in life, that's going to be a wonderful way to do it. And it's not going to be done just by government, but can be done by others. So it completely gels with all the other, I think, political narratives that people are doing, right? So it's quite easy, I think, to put a practical stance to it. What is difficult is when you're dealing with grant people, grant agency people who think that, meaning in life is fluffy, why you talk about it, right? These are the same people who used to say satisfaction is fluffy, why you talk about it? Well, we talk about it because you resigned from your job because you were not satisfied. We talk about it because you did poorly and didn't get your bonus because you were not satisfied, and that affected your performance. So meaning in life matters, right? It leads to all these things that matter, whether you are a scientist, practitioner, religious guy or not. I don't really care who you are. I find it perplexing if you think meaning in life does not matter, right? As a subject of interest to study, as something that we want to enhance. as something that actually lead to practical outcome. Just think about healthier SG, the whole exercise, right? Meaning in life is going to matter. In fact, in September, a little bit of koyo here. In September, I'm delivering the keynote for the conference on occupational medicine and public health in Singapore, right? A few hundred people will attend, right? And in my keynote, I will talk about how social and behavioral sciences actually can contribute to a healthier Singapore or a healthier people, right? And meaning in life, well-being will be the examples of things that I will bring in as well. I'll try to get that recorded and put on the video, so you don't have to attend the conference to hear that if you're interested. All right, any more questions? I do have one last one, which I can round off if there's no one raising your hand, because that was just nice. I can end at 5 then for all of you. Okay, last question, but you can raise your hand if you have still have a last question. My last question says, maybe you could also relate how this research links to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Does this research on meaning in life connect to Maslow's theory and show that Maslow's theory are outdated or more flaws? Okay, Maslow's theory, I think most of you know, right? Maslow's theory is a little triangle, right? They start with basic needs that you are right below your physiological needs, your hunger and your safety needs, social needs, and right on top at the apex, right? Your interpersonally, right on top is your self-actualization. So Maslow hierarchy is very popular in the business world, among popular people, among non-scientists, among behavioral scientists, psychologists, right, is typically treated as a bad thing, because originally when Maslow's theory was presented, it has a lot of claims, right, which has been shown to be not legitimate, such as there is a stage theory, you must finish one stage needs first, then you go to another stage. If that's the case, you will never have Gandhi who fasts, because Gandhi chose to fast because of higher needs. So you don't actually have to proceed along the stages, right, in the invariant order. But that aside, right, the closest to meaning in life from a Western researcher perspective at the apex of the hierarchy, there is self-actualization, right? And self-determination needs by Racy, Ryan, Dacey, and all this talks about the sense of autonomy, a competence, a sense of making a difference, could be actualizing yourself. Now, I would argue that that's a very westernized, romanticized version of meaning in life, right? Regardless of Maslow's theory, which has all its flaws, I would say self-actualization is one of the ways that a person can find meaning in life, but it need not be. My meaning in life can be based on something quite concrete. I just found a wonderful job that I love, and it really, I can really do well in it. I not only earn money, but I enjoy the job. I make a difference to people's life. I have a community that I like. Maybe that's good enough for my meaning in life, and I can be wonderful, living a very fulfilling life, right? There's no really particular self-actualization that I need to conceptualize and so on. Then others who say, oh, myself or who I am is to make the difference. I want to be the scientist who's the eureka and discover the next light bulb, and if that is the case, fine, and then you actualize yourself. So depending on how you define self-actualization, the way it's being defined, it is in the very abstract, I would say, westernized sense that tend to focus on very self-centered, self-focused goals of reaching a particular state of yourself. It doesn't tend to bring in people that are interpersonal, the collective, the group, and so on. So issues like community as a lived experience, right? Self-actualization, would not like it very much. But I would argue that for some of us, community is critical, right? It actually provides us a very strong basis of meaning in life. For me, David Chian as an individual, right? Community is very important to me, right? It's important to me to have a group of friends that understand me, that I can talk to, that I can be who I am. And I think those matter to me. Joshua, yes, you have a question.
Hi, Prof. So these 5 C's, they remind me of 6 forms of wealth, which is one of the many models that people put up as in when I was myself looking for like my own meaning and what to prioritize in life. So they mention human wealth, intellectual wealth, social wealth, so natural wealth, financial wealth. So I was trying to understand and maybe differentiate between these two, and it seems like this 6 forms of wealth seems to be more covers external resources versus your 5 C's on the individual level and maybe more on the self-subjective evaluation level. Do you think it's useful and interesting to consider the 6 forms? I can send in the how to say, in the chat function if you would want to look at
Yeah,
that.
I understand the forms. It's just
Okay.
like some of us have talked about different capital, right? You can have financial, economic capital, social capital, human capital, psychological capital. I think when you talk about the different forms of wealth, they are not very different from your United Development Goals that you talk about sustainability in terms of economic, social, and all. Those are common language in our discourse that we use to describe domains of life. Financial is clear, economic, social, and all. Right, but I think with that alone actually doesn't really address the issue, right? I may have financial, for example, is going to help me in my life satisfaction. With the money, I can get the things that I want. I can send my kid to overseas university if I want to, and so on. But the meaning in life is quite different. Meaning in life is about, oh, do I have a purpose? Does it matter to my life, and all these things may or may not depending on your financial and economic wealth. That's why in my studies, right, although they are undergraduates, I was able to get a proxy of their economic status, right? Since I got their social household income, I also know the type of housing that they live in. So when I use these variables, I found that my 5C experiences apply equally same direction, regardless of your resources. Right? But if resources matter so much, then people who are from private housing, people who have a very high household income should have more money, should have less things to worry about, then they should have a higher meaning in life. But that's not what we found, right? And that's because you can be rich and you may not necessarily have friends. You can be rich, you may not be in a job that you love. You can be rich, you may not be able to be who you truly what you want you are. And you may not be even progressing towards your goal. So the life experiences, I think, are quite different from the normal conventional way that we describe domains of life. They are about distinct or related components of the experiences that we all tend to go through. To the extent those life experiences that are positive, I think we are much more likely to experience meaning in life, which is quite different. Say, if you got money, then there's meaning in life. If you got a lot of friends, there's meaning in life, right? It is about the experience itself. Which is quite different from just domains in life. They are not unrelated, of course, but I think if we go to broad domains like this, then you are moving even a bit more distal away from the real proximate causes, right? When you go into these kind of domains, it may only be a useful heuristic to help you think about variables to include in a model, a large model. I don't think they are taxonomy of proximate causes.
So it's like independent, and the distinction is where it's more like the resources is different from how you experience that meaning in
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Because those domains and resources that you have are actually quite distal. But you and I, Joshua and I, we might need different amount of money to be happy or to have meaning, right? Because we pursue in different things. If I need a lot of friends, actually, if I spend all my time trying to make money, I probably will have less friends. And the kind of friends I have, I cannot be who I am. They are my clients. I have to put on a particular front, right? So having more money or more access to social networks and all these things, sometimes, in certain circumstances, it can actually negate some of these life experiences.
I see. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, good, right? We should end now, unless there is a dying question with a dying hand around, but I don't see any. And Joshua's question is asked already. You are in the chat. Okay, I have one last one, and I will end this, right? And then we really call it a day, and we end on the dot. Thanks so much for the presentation. Could you elaborate physical, mental, cognitive functioning interventions to improve health elderly people? Well, a bit general. The question asks about can meaning in life help elderly people, especially, right, in the sense of increasing your cognitive functioning and health. What we know from the research is that people with higher meaning in life, especially in troubled times, they tend to, of course, have better longevity in life. They have better, what is the word to use? A better health span, right? And they tend to suffer less, right, in between their lifespan minus health span during the difficult period. But I want to caution you, and I told this in my class very clear. Please don't mislead people and tell somebody who is suffering from cancer, who needs a second opinion, who needs to go diagnosis, and say it's okay, life has meaning, just be meaningful, and that's going to help you to recover. No, right? The research shows that when you have difficult medical conditions, having a high meaning in life is not going to lengthen your life. Actually, it's going to shorten your life, because you will think that everything is fine. I'm not going to see a doctor. So you won't going to actually get those physical help that you need. Right, so be a bit ethical, please, right, in the way we understand the research, and meaning in life is not a panacea for everything. There will be times where having a high meaning in life, right, doesn't really help you in a particular problem. such as a very severe cognitive impairment and so on. Right. But again, I just want to say, meaning in life is always not just response to drastic outlier negative events and things. Meaning in life affect all of us as an undergraduate, as a PhD student. We are dealing with meaning in life all the time. And the more we deal with it, I think the better we will be. Okay, I think with that, I really should end. I just want to make a quick announcement. There are a few of you, especially I think from A-Star Institutes, you wanted to stay back and chat with me about research, doing research, practical research and so on. So we'll stay on in this session after it ends. So don't log out. The rest of you who are not interested in that part, of course, we are done officially with the session. You are free to stay back if you want, but if not, but we really have come to the end of this session. Just leave me to thank you for listening to me. I know it's a tough one, but I will put this video on my YouTube. And in my YouTube, there are also other talks such as the computational social sciences, which, by the way, is something that can be applied to meaning in life that nobody has done it. That will be in the stage 3, stage 4 of my program of research, if I have the longevity of life to carry that on. All right, thank you very much, everybody. I can't really see your face, but I imagine I can, and so I'm going to wave to you. Thanks for your long suffering, and hope all of you are able to live meaningfully. Right, thank you, bye-bye. And we will stop this recording. And now, as others exit, A-Star friends, please